Marguerite's like, yeah, Jocelyn, come on now. Okay. So also fair warning, Jamie, you're our trial, you're recording.
Yeah.
This is our trial. This is good. This is our trial run, so you'll have to bear with us. But we do have 6 teachers here today that want to talk about and will talk about ways they've been structuring their classrooms and creating engagement with students. We encourage if you want to ask questions, put them in the chat. Jamie and I will be keeping an eye on them, and we'll try to have them answer them as best as they can. And we'll go from there. So let's do a quick, they're going to introduce themselves and say obviously where they teach. And we did colors before. Let's do, I like this one. We're going to share what winter activity represents who you are. Okay. And who did I start with last time? Who started us off? It was Duet? Okay. Do you want to start again?
Sure.
Okay. All right, Duet. So your name, where you teach, and what winter sport represents who you are.
Hello, everyone. My name is Duet Cullen. I teach at Whitehorse Middle School, 8th grade, math, science, and algebra. And I would say curling up by a fire, reading a book with some hot tea. That represents me. Thank you.
My name is Amber Handerhan, and I teach at Senate 8th grade humanities, and I would say sledding.
Hi, my name is Margaret Fairchild Gongora. I teach at Toki. I'm a 6th grade language arts teacher, and I would say binge watching Netflix.
Hey, I'm Eliav Goldman. I teach music, choir, and musical theater at Toki Middle School, and I would say going on a snowy winter walk in the woods.
Hi, my name is Therese Nepomuceno. I teach at Toki. I'm a 7th grade evidence science teacher. And I would say probably doing paint by numbers.
I am Tanya Gruder. I teach PE and health at Toki Middle School. And my winter activity would be shoveling snow.
All right, thank you all. So this is your panel for the afternoon, and I love that share. I encourage you all to use it. You can even use it. I used it once, when things were really tough, and I was like, so what winter sport represents who you are right now? It's a really bad day. We had luge and bobsled, and someone said curling, and they had a great analogy. So, all right. So the first question that we want to offer this panel is describe the way you've structured your virtual classroom to promote engagement. So again, describe the way that you have structured your virtual classroom to promote engagement. And Elia, why don't we start with you?
Sure. So I teach, like I said, music, choir, theater. I think I'll focus mainly on the music class because it's something that every student at Toki takes, whereas choir and theater are sort of opt-in classes. So music really, just in general, requires lots of engagement. And that was a big struggle for us. How are we going to structure this new class during virtual learning? And my colleagues and I got to take or attend a hip hop pedagogy workshop in the summer, sponsored by the district. And that really helped shape how we've done things this year, mainly through the way of the cipher, which is our big, and I've talked about this at Toki, it's our big strategy. And the hip hop cipher is really just a place for people to share energy, ideas, and information with each other. And so that's a practice that we use each and every week that we see students, where everybody's unmuting and sharing energy, ideas, and information in the cipher. I play a beat, and everybody then we go in an order, and everybody just kind of shares. Sometimes we have a structure, like a question, sometimes we don't. So that really is the main way that we've structured things, and pretty much everything else that we do also requires engagement, whether it's the chat. Every day I'm playing music in the beginning of class, and students are telling me what they're noticing in the chat, and we're having discussions. So music in general, I'm lucky in that way that it requires that engagement, but it's been fun trying to structure it in a way to promote that with students as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Eliav. And then Tanya.
Similar to Eliav, I do PE and health, which when we're in the building requires a lot of like engagement and participating in activities. Through virtual, I've really utilized using that private chat and not calling kids out who ask the questions or say things, but instead use them as an anonymous and let the whole class know, like, there was a question in the chat or there was a comment that I think everyone would benefit from. I also have really kind of pushed the self-care and mental health for kids. So if they are recognizing that they're draining and they need a screen break or they need to do something, I ask them, instead of just shutting their camera off or muting themselves and like walking away, to let me know, to have that line of communication and know that I'm willing to give them that extra 5 minutes away from the computer, that extra just self-care and recognizing like where they are at.
Awesome. Thanks, Tanya. Duet.
I teach math, and so a lot of the warm-ups that I do are related to students getting an opportunity to reflect on how their brain feels as they tap into that problem-solving sensation when it comes to math. I'm an algebra and pre-algebra teacher, and the virtual format for these topics and these subjects it's been intense to work with students in this platform in engaging in such abstract concepts. So every day we do a slightly different warm-up, and there's the game set. It's an online game. There's this ABC YA brain trainer. I do number talks from U Cubed. And then I do pattern talks, which is just a visual pattern website. And the action of it, the prompt the students have is, how does your brain feel while you're conducting these tasks? What is the sensation that you're noticing? Where are you noticing the sensation? Are you getting frustrated? Is there something that really clicks with you? Is there something that's kind of boring? Do you kind of feel like you shut down? So we just have these conversations every day. And at this point, it's about students sharing these kind of activities I engage with more. These kinds of activities I kind of step away from. So then it becomes a yes and. So yes, you are going to like certain activities more than others. And at the same time, there are things we still need to engage with.
Perfect. Thank you, Duet.
For the questions that are in there, do we?
Yeah, I will take care of them.
Thank you.
Yep. So Eliav, if you could respond, if you have something you can drop in the chat. Someone is wondering about the resources for finding the beats. As far as turning cameras on, that's a hot button. So we're gonna try to answer that perhaps in the next question. So let's move to, and I'm gonna read the chat as Amber. It is your turn to talk about ways you've structured your classroom.
Okay, I have a homeroom and a humanities class. For homeroom, we do start off with a song, and it allows time for latecomers to get there, so they're used to that routine. The other thing that we do is in homeroom is I have 7 volunteers at this time that regularly read the Senate equity statement. So that helps with the comfort level of talking on Zoom. And so that's one way that I would structure my class for homeroom. For humanities, we start off class with, I call it 1-word answers or yes, no questions. So it's just like a quick 1-word or yes or no response. And I have a whole bunch. I mean, I listed numerous a lot of statements for 1-word, or a lot of questions for 1-word answers, and a lot of yes, no questions. And then it turned into kids coming up with it. And actually they've shared they really enjoy that. I think it's because it's just a quick response and they get comfortable to talk on the Zoom, which is what I'm trying to achieve. So that's where I'm at with structuring my virtual classrooms.
Excellent. Thank you, Amber. So Jamie, people want resources. So in the background, Jamie is going to be creating a document or modifying a document, right, Jamie?
I just added a little spot that says resources on the bottom of the flyer. And
Okay.
so because we're going to have two panels, I'll just collect all the resources from both panels. I'm also recording this, so we'll send the recording out and any resources that our guests have, but so that they can focus their energy on you instead of digging for resources, we'll send that out after the fact.
And I'm going to save the chat too, and I think I can share it with the panelists, and then they can go through and make sure that they've answered any and all questions, because Amber, something with yes, no things. So you can grab that. It's hard to listen and do this stuff too. So we have Teresa is next. Thank you.
So for my science and AVID classes, each one is about 29 minutes long. So I really try to, in order for a class to be successful, I feel like I need to start class with engagement and getting them, like welcoming them into the space. So at the beginning of each class, we have a do now, which is more or less time for us to do now and more or less time for us to like socialize and be silly and like talk about our days. Sometimes instead of doing like our science related or AVID related do now, if a student brings a riddle to class, I always have that open, is that they can bring their riddle and then we'll talk about it for the first few minutes. And then that transition from like being silly and welcoming to class and talking and saying hi, we have 30 seconds of mindfulness at the beginning of every class, which can seem kind of stressful in a class that in reality is about 20 minutes long. But I find that it's like very, very useful, and it's promoting that self-care and thinking about how students can build that into their day. So with those 30 seconds of mindfulness, they have about 4 or 5 different sound options. And then we just vote on which sound we want to listen to. We start a 30-minute timer, a 30-second timer, and a bell goes off at the end. And then we know at the end of that bell, that's when we're going to switch our brain into science mode. And during that mindfulness time, I encourage them to doodle, space out, do anything except worry about school or look at their screen pretty much. I always tell them, like, you could take a 30-second nap if you want to, as long as you're back in the zone after the bell ends. I also have like a class playlist for a lot of my classes, just on Spotify. If they send me like a clean version of a song, and that's what we listen to a lot of the times at the beginning of class or during any transitions or while they're doing their exit slip. And I find that kind of gets students, especially at the beginning of class, if they hear like their song playing, they like get pretty pumped. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Teresa. Marguerite.
So the way Toki 6th grade ELA is structured, we have a 60-minute block. So we're really able to incorporate that GRR model. So in order to like really promote engagement and keep myself and the students accountable, I keep track of their level of participation. It might be in the chat, I'll mark that. If they volunteered to read, I'll mark that. If they shared an answer to a question, or if I call on them. So one of the things I do in person is call on every student with either the note cards or the popsicle sticks. So I still do that now. Students always have the opportunity to pass, and sometimes if a student doesn't unmute right away, I'll give them some time. It might be thinking time. They might have stepped away from their computer, and then I'll message them privately. Like, hey, would you be able to read the next learning target or read the next slide for us? And then they'll come back and usually message in the chat. And same as Teresa, having students like unmute at the beginning of class to say hi, calling their name, just so like we're touching base at the beginning of every class period as well. And then just leaving that chat open so students can privately ask questions and also interacting with each other. 6th graders were really nervous about making friends and making connections with kids because they're all coming from many different schools. And so that chat feature has been really helpful for kids to interact and make connections with each other and also with the adults in that space too.
Outstanding. Thank you all. So I did link it in the chat. That should be the right document. No one said it wasn't. So now we're going to move into the next question, which is a specific strategy that you've used to build connection, community, and relationships with students in your classroom. I realize that this is it's building on what you just said, but this might be a really good place for you to name something that's gotten kids to turn cameras on. So what is a way perhaps that they've decided to do the thing that maybe they weren't doing before? So think of it in that case, and perhaps we can answer that question as well. In this case, I started with Eliav last time. Is there a panelist that's like, I cannot wait to talk about this question, and you want to throw your hand up in the air? Like you just don't care. Hi, Tanya. All right, Tanya, you're up. And then in my order, Duet, you would be next.
I've tried a couple different things. I also have like a homeroom, we call it crew at Toki, so like Amber in the morning. And we've played games like I Spy, and basically they have to have their camera on in order to play, because like my background wouldn't work very well because it's just a white wall. But in your background, you find something and you say like, I spy something brown, and then kids have, like, you set up protocols about how they would raise their hand and guess what it is. Another way that I've engaged kids or made connections with them is, and I have the benefit of being like a UA or a PE health teacher because I have kids 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So if I had them previously, I can ask them questions or bring up things that I know about them. The nice thing about 6th graders is a lot of them have siblings. So if you recognize a last name and you say, oh, like, is so-and-so your sibling? And then a lot of them, if I don't recognize the names, or maybe like they had an older sibling that was at Toki before I was at Toki, they'll pop in and be like, do you remember this person? So it's just making that connection with them and showing that like I might know them and their family, like I might know something about them. I also like to take time to, especially with 6th graders being new to the building, like asking them questions about themselves. That's not necessarily like curriculum based or PE and health related. It's literally just how their day is, what they like to do, their favorite colors, do they have pets? And I also always take the accidental Zoom like bloopers, and I use them to my benefit. I had a 7th grade class where a bunny hopped into someone's screen, and then we found out that multiple kids in that class had pet bunnies. So we took like 5 minutes to introduce our pet bunnies and get to know their pets. And then of course it spirals a little bit sometimes. And it's like, well, I have a pet dog. Like, do you want to meet my dog? Like, sure. So just letting them know that like, I'm a human, they're a human, and like, let's get to know each other, even though we're not with each other.
Perfect. Thank you, Tanya. I love that there was a coalition of pet bunnies. That's amazing. All right, Duet.
So for the cameras, at the beginning of this time going virtual, I really struggled with the cameras being off, being very much connected with not knowing what the students were doing behind those cameras. And that felt very uncomfortable and very confusing for me. Once I switched to a learning tool, a learning tech tool that allowed me to see real-time work from the students. So I use Desmos quite frequently for my math classes. I noticed my stress about the cameras really lessened. So if a student is doing their work in Desmos and I can see it in real time, I'm not as much on them about them having their camera off. However, if I notice their work is not being completed, I will definitely become more straightforward with them about that. And at this point in the school year, and this took, talking with families, parent-teacher conferences, conversations with families where I said, like, I would not recognize your child if I saw them on the street because I don't see them. And families just kind of going, okay, so then, yeah, let's get your camera on. And then having that very strict expectation of your camera has to be on all the time, and then being able to throttle back and say, hey, if you're doing your work, I can negotiate here and let you keep your camera off. But the moment I notice you're not doing your work, camera's on. And it's like this reverse because they think I'm giving a little, I guess you could say, there seems to be more of a willingness, especially for these middle schoolers. Having their camera on or off really feels like something that I can use to create their engagement in their academics more. So at this point, I don't have a lot of kids with their cameras on. But I can let go of that some days. Some days it's very lonely and it's very, it kind of feels isolating. But overall, it's a strategy at this point in our learning that has helped build their academic involvement. So I kind of change the set point depending upon what's happening.
Excellent. Thank you, Duet. Kimber.
One of the things that I created through the experience here is it's called Breakout Buddy Leader. And the first step I took with it was finding out who are my leaders for each class. And then once I have those leaders established, I meet with them in a breakout. And we've already done this training process. It's already in effect. But anyhow, with those leaders, what the expectation is to have their camera on, and they share their screen, and what they will be doing is working on the assignment together with a breakout group. But the expectation is the camera on and sharing the assignment that we're working on that day. And then what I do is I travel through the breakouts, or I go to the breakout and I don't engage, I just watch. And the breakout buddy leader has his or her camera on and has the assignment up, and there is verbal interaction taking place. It's trying to pretend like you're in the classroom sitting at the table and there's this collaborative group talking about the lesson. And it's really nice to just be an observer and going into that breakout and watching this take place. And these leaders, and I have 5 in my first period, 5 in the second period, third, not so many. And then kids they're a little nervous, but once they get comfortable, it just becomes natural. And kind of adding what you said, Duvette, when the cameras are on, one of the things that we talked about, the leaders and I, was the cameras being on helps with this being at home and feeling so isolated from your friends and from not being in the building. And so when cameras are on, they're seeing faces, and it does help. And so if more kids would turn their cameras on with comfort, it would engage or encourage other students to turn on their cameras. So once again, a breakout buddy leader is a strategy that has been very successful within my Zooms.
Excellent. Thank you, Amber. Teresa.
Yeah, so I have 3 main strategies that I use. The first one I kind of already talked about a little bit, which is taking time for silliness in your classroom. It's really hard in like a 29-minute class, but like just building into your lesson plan that 5 minutes of that is going to be looking at people's pets. Like Tanya said, it could be, we're learning geology right now. Like, so making time for someone to go off on a rant about their rock collection, or for them to talk about what they ate for lunch. I feel like building in that time, so you don't feel stressed, and then you're not like rushing the students to finish, like wrap up their story, helps everybody. And I've been trying to figure out how to, like, those things that people like want to get off topic about, how to like bring them into class. Like, so a lot of my classes now have pet mascots, where if a student always has like their pet on camera with them that class period, like, guess what? That's the new period 5 pet mascot, and they are here to learn about rocks with us. And like, what does the pet mascot have to say about our do now, or anything like that. The second strategy I use a lot, it's called student assistance. So what I have is every day, so for each class period and every day, I have 5 students from that class that are deemed like their student assistant for that day. And every kid in each class has its specific day, like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, or Friday, that they are the student assistant. And the students know, we've done this like every day for like a few months now, and they know that Tuesday in science class, like that is their time to shine. If they don't normally engage, if they're not normally someone that has their camera on or participates, like they can kind of like, and that makes them like kind of nervous sometimes, they can save it up. And then on Tuesday, like they know that I will be calling on them. They know that I'm going to be encouraging them to participate. So the student assistants, basically what they are, backing up a little bit, is if you're a student assistant, it is your responsibility to participate in some way during science that day. It can be in the chat, it can be private messaging me, it can be reading something out loud, it can be answering a question or asking a question. And they know that if it's almost like the last 10 minutes of class, they're a student assistant, they haven't participated yet. I don't view it as me calling them out. I always say like, okay, now I'm calling in my student assistants. Like, I would really love to hear from like X, Y, and Z. Today's your day to shine. And sometimes they don't participate on their student assistant day, and that's fine. And I just private message them and be like, we got it next week. Like, I can't wait to see what you share. Like, I'll see you tomorrow. And that it's like, I just printed out a seat chart from IC, and that like, these are my Monday kids. These are my Tuesday student assistants. These are Wednesday. So it's not any like work for me. But I think it helps students if they don't normally feel like participating, that they like know that on that day, like they're going to need to step it up a little bit. And then the last thing, I have to shout out my co-teacher, Jenny Kupinski. She is out there right now. We do brackets. We've done it for one unit so far, but like we were learning geologies, and like rocks can like rocks, right? So what we do is we had like a bracket competition where we like every day they looked at 2 pictures of rocks. They learned about 1 fact about each of those rocks, and they had to vote which rock is a better rock. And some of them based on like how cool the rock looks, or like, oh my gosh, it can be used as a weapon. Like, that's so cool. Like, I'm gonna vote on that rock. And then we had like a March Madness type bracket. And then we had like a final showdown of the last 2 rocks. It was obsidian, won almost all of the classes because it's really cool rock. But that was a way, just like a really silly way for them to like get really into it. And a lot of them got like really harsh about the rocks. Like, that rock stinks. Like, how could you vote for that rock? And we had to like back it up a little bit, but it was really fun, and it engaged them not only in curriculum, but also got a lot of students participating and like really rooting for whatever rock they voted for that day.
Well, I don't know if anything gets more sciencey than voting on rocks, but you all win. That's amazing. I love it. All right, Marguerite, focusing on this question about specific strategies for building community.
One of the things we do on our 6th grade smaller team, we started a virtual cafeteria. There are 4 of us, and we split it up between Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And we have like a 30-minute Zoom meeting for students to come and hang out during our hour lunch block. They can pick the activity, they can join like their own breakout rooms and play Among Us together. And that's really helped us connect with students, because usually like during that class period, it's so focused on academics. This helps us build relationships with those kids, especially the ones that aren't in our crew. We see the students in our crew for about 90 minutes. And so those other students, this gives us a chance to spend time with them. And then a lot of them will put their cameras on because it's a smaller setting. And then I would say the same is true for like when we work in smaller breakout rooms. Or one-on-one, having them turn their camera on, then having them share their screen. Like Amber had shared, like that's really like before they go into those breakout rooms, kind of assigning a role. Who's going to be the note taker, the reader, who's going to be the reporter when we come back, similar to what we would do in person. And then for encouraging cameras on in our crew, we started with a small increment of time, like 10 seconds, encouraging the majority of our students to get their cameras on, nudging them with that ask to, turn their camera on button. And then we're up to in our crew like 1.5 minutes, and we're just waving, we're checking in with each other, we're showing what we're eating for breakfast. And that's what we do in between our crew period and our content hour block, because we like take like a 5-minute break. We come back, and then to know that they're actually back, they either have to like turn their camera on and participate in the camera challenge, or type in the chat like, yes, I'm here. So we know like, okay, we're ready to re-engage in learning.
Excellent. Thank you, Marguerite. So there's so many strategies. Jamie, we should have had a note taker this whole time. just someone like typing out all the stuff, but it's all right. We'll get it.
I've been working on it and we'll
Have you?
add-
Okay.
Yeah, I've been trying. Yep.
You're
So
wonderful.
I
Oh, Jill
will
is taking notes too. This is lovely.
add a bunch of things to the document as we are. And if anybody's taking notes on a computer, you can share them with me. That'd be great.
Outstanding. I saw Jill. Sorry, I put you out there, Jill. I know you direct messaged me, but now you're out there. All right. So, and I know that there was a question on equity, and I'm not trying to skate over that. It was something that we were talking about. We may have to say that if this works out, to begin another panel where we specifically address issues of equity in the classroom and strategies we're using to promote equity. So not skating by that. Today was a larger issue of engagement in building relationships. So the last question is not going to Jill, it's going to everyone, and it's this. What have you learned? So this is like your advice, so to speak. This is your like life lesson. What have you learned since the start of virtual schooling that you think could be useful for other teachers? And is there a human of this panel that's like, I can't wait to talk about this? Ah, you're gonna have to fight it out. I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen there.
Margaret, okay, all right, thank you, Margaret. Something as I was listening to my co-panelists speak, there was so much that was like, yes. In addition to a lot of what has been said, the aspect of my profession that I have known for a while, but in this experience of virtual learning has just really, really come home is working with a team of people. And the importance that I work with 2 other 8th grade teachers. We share 2 groups of kids between the 3 of us. And I just want to shout them out, Fawn O'Brien, Sam Blue. And between the 3 of us, we are able to ebb and flow in our self-care. So if I need to take a moment to step back because I'm exhausted, frustrated, overwhelmed, all of the above, Sam and Fawn have been extremely gracious, and vice versa. And especially when it comes to working with children that are disengaged, having a tag team effort in communicating with the students and their families has been extremely helpful. And between the 3 of us, we're usually able to schedule some sort of one-on-one time with children so that that child is getting individualized attention from one of us. And in that more individualized environment, their cameras are on, and it's a lot easier for them. It's a lot easier to ask that of them because it's just us. And then it's also just really wonderful to see them. Most of my students that I have this school year, I looped with from 7th grade. I have about 10 new students that I haven't met in person, but a lot of my students, I've met them in person as 7th graders. And so the engagement with them in this environment there's a lot that I have brought with me as collateral, I think that's the right word, as deposits in the relationship bank. So those deposits are kind of running out. So it's nice to have a team to work with to rejuvenate those deposits. And, and equity is absolutely something. It is always on our mind. It is always part of the decisions we're making for the math lessons, for the ELA lessons, for family communication, everything that we do when it comes to engagement and the social emotional learning of our students, there's an aspect of equity running through all of that. And so for me, it's embedded in everything we do. I'm sure a lot of educators here have that same experience and philosophy. So I would be interested in listening to a panel like that if it ever is formed. So we'll see what comes next.
For sure. Thank you. All right, Amber, something you've learned.
Well, what I've learned, taking care of yourself is extremely important so that you can be better for the students. So one of the things that I'm constantly reminding myself as I do this is allow for wait time. When you're on Zooms and you don't see faces, to seriously just allow the quiet time, Because when I give that 30-second to 1 minute wait, then voices will be heard. And I'm saying this to myself more than anybody, is not making assumptions when screens aren't turned on, because it's not automatically meaning a student is in front of the computer and ignoring you. The student could be letting the dog out, or just the other day, a student shared, oh, I had to go do the dishes. So not making assumptions when the screens aren't on, and make time for those one-to-one breakouts. Like Marguerite said, when you're in a breakout, that comfort zone for the student to turn on the camera is there. And then just having some just getting to know each other, talk time. And then it slowly transcends into that comfort level to turn your camera on in the main Zoom, or even a small group breakout Zoom.
Awesome. Thank you, Amber. Teresa.
Yes, I mean, what Amber said about the assumptions with the videos being on, I view that as like an equity strategy of us not assuming anything, not viewing kids who turn on their camera as like better students in any way. They just have different things going on. It's just different. That's all it is. And like viewing that for what it is. But yeah, I have learned that, so I'm a first year teacher, so like I didn't know what their curriculum was coming into this year. And I've learned like taking your time with curriculum is just so important. It's not going to go as fast as it did in person. And part of that is I've also learned is if you want students to do an assignment and you want them to do it well, you have to give them time during class. Like I've learned that to not, at least for my classes, to not expect students to go out of their way after school hours, even after like Toki ends at 2 p.m. and they like have independent work time for an hour and a half. Like I'm just not going to assume that students are going to be working for an hour and a half on their computer at the end of the school day. And so if I want it done and I want it done well, I'm going to choose quality over quantity. If it takes us 3 days to fill in a Word document, then that's the way it is, as frustrating as it might be for us as teachers. And with that, I think what I found is like super helpful is when they're doing independent work time is putting each student in their own breakout room. I know people have already talked about that. And what I have is that as soon as they go into their own breakout room, the routine is that they automatically start screen sharing. Even if they're the only person in that breakout room and they are by themselves, they are screen sharing the entire time from the moment they enter. And that's to save time, is because we talked about like science is short, and we don't have time for every breakout room I go into for you to like then set up your screen share, then go to the right tab. Like we need to be ready to talk about it as soon as I come into your breakout room. And that's been really helpful for me in terms of saving time and actually being able to check in on students during class time.
Thank you, Teresa. Marguerite.
Our classes for language arts are an hour long in 6th grade. And one of the things I really liked was creating a set of shared Google Slides where all the students can edit at one time. I created a title page slide where they can just click on their name and it will take them directly to the slide they're working on. And that way I can see in real time who's opened up the document, or who's opened up our slides, if they're on the right slide. If they're not, I can help guide them, message them in the chat, share that link again. It's okay if you have to ask if you don't know where we are, or you don't want to navigate the Google Classroom. Okay, I'll just share it with you directly. And then communicating, like Duet said, with families. I have multiple text threads going with many family members. And if I notice that a student either wasn't in class or like started their work but didn't quite finish, I just message and say, hey, if they're free, I'll be in my room at 2, like send them the Zoom link again. And I get a lot more students coming since I started doing that. After like the regular school day ends at 2, a lot of students will come to office hours. And then on my smaller 6th grade team of like math, language arts, and science social studies teachers, we have offered optional office hours on Wednesdays as well. And we don't get a ton of kids, maybe 1 or 2 a week, but still it was 1 or 2 a week that, needed help and got some extra attention, finished up some assignments, and counted as their attendance for that day.
Thank you, Marguerite. Real quick, okay, there's an answer in the chat. Thank you, Teresa. Eliav.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing, and Teresa talked about this before, but is just to prioritize fun. Obviously, we want to be rigorous and we want to offer really engaging material for our students, but it's life's hard right now, and so to prioritize fun is really to celebrate their individuality, their joy, all of that, and it helps with all of the questions that we've talked about before. Um, Specifically like about cameras, you can play fun games where we do like trivia or um, yes no, kind of like four corners, where like if you agree with the statement your camera's on, or if you disagree with the statement your camera's off. Like just building in fun things where maybe it's not always connected to curriculum, but it's engaging students and helping to build that community, I find is really important. And Miss James, along with your question, like Tanya and I, our classes are 30 minutes and we only see them twice a week. So trying to build in, that's music class too. Like for choir and theater, I see them 30 minutes once a week. So, really time should be, we should be worrying more about time. We definitely were at the beginning of the year, but I've sort of just like deprioritized worrying about that and just like tried to celebrate as much as possible.
Awesome. Thank you, Eliav. All right, Tanya.
Something that I've learned since the start, and probably the hardest thing I had to learn, was letting go of needing to have the cameras on. Yes, it gets draining and it's hard to look at a screen that just says a bunch of names, but I've come to realize that me having my camera on is my privilege. I have my there's nothing in my background that I'm worried about anybody seeing. There's nobody that's going to walk into my background that I'm concerned about somebody seeing. I'm not concerned about how I look. Whereas for middle schoolers, this is a time where they don't like the way they look, maybe, or their background isn't as inviting or typical of what the norm might be for other kids or their friends. And it might be something they don't want people to see, or they don't want people to know. And that's something that was really hard for me to kind of grasp. And then like once I had a conversation with another person about it, I was like, it is my privilege that I can have my screen on and feel comfortable with it on. It's my privilege that I can leave it on right now and I could walk away and I would feel comfortable with knowing that nothing would happen that I should be embarrassed about or not want somebody to see or know. So I think that was the hardest thing for me to really grasp. And then once I did, I kind of just openly told my kids one day. I was like, you know what, leave the screens off. I'm done. I get it. I don't care if they're on. I want to know that you're okay. And I want to know that you are here to learn and you're here to engage and you're here to be your unique, weird little selves with me. So I think it was definitely the hardest thing to learn, but I think I have seen a giant jump in participation, turning in assignments, asking questions, just try, even kids that like don't know me because they're sixth graders, trying to get to know me because I've accepted the fact that I'm going to get to know them in a different way than seeing their face. So.
Thank you so much, Tanya. Yeah, you got a lot of love on that one, as you should. I had so much love to all of you. My goodness. A big part of me wants to take notes just so I can have even more strategies to share across the district for sure. But all of the hard work you all are doing is so humbling, and I appreciate it. And with that, we have about 7 minutes, which is pretty good. I do want to make sure we end at 1:55. So now's your chance to ask a specific question. I know a bunch have come through chat, but if there's something you'd really like to know, then let's put it out there. You can either just unmute yourself and start talking, put it in the chat. And then what I'd like to do is just someone who's like, I really want to answer that. We'll just try to hear from 1 or 2 voices versus trying to answer 6 times.
And Jocelyn, I'm just going to quick interrupt, just because I realize we've got some wisdom in the audience as well too. So I did actually just recreate a document that has a chart on it that you could drop some, if you know of some good virtual resources. But Jocelyn, because I'm recording, I can't actually drop it in the chat. So I shared it with you. It is editable for everyone. So audience members, if there's anything you want to add, please feel free to do that. And I will send that out in addition. Just wanted to get that in there.
Did you share it to me? And there it is.
I did.
All right. You're lovely. Let me open it up. I'll put it in the chat. Any questions for this panel? Something you're dying to know, you'd love to know.
Jocelyn?
Oh, sorry, Duet. Go ahead.
Thanks, Elia. I just wanted to add on something that Teresa had shared, a yes and related to mindfulness with students. Mindfulness, I'm a meditation teacher and I'm a member of the core mindfulness team for the school district. And something that I think is always beautiful and important is mindfulness can show up in so many different ways in the classroom. Having quiet time with your students is absolutely one beautiful way to do it. Building their awareness of the learning process and building their awareness of their internal experience with the learning process, I think is another beautiful way to incorporate mindfulness strategies into the work that you do with children. Understanding the way the brain works with that learning process, I think as a math teacher, we talk about that a lot because there's unique strategies with learning math and understanding the brain, but I think all of the things we teach are extremely useful to understand when it comes to the way learning is experienced bodily. And especially in this time when there's so much going on that creates stress and worry and discomfort, and how that all shows up as a bodily experience when they arrive at spaces with us. So I'm happy to talk about anybody, talk about this with anybody. If there's anything you want to have clarifying questions on, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I know Jamie will be sending out information, and if my email's in there, I'm absolutely okay with that. I'm not the only member of the core mindfulness team. So there are a lot of amazing people, and the core mindfulness team are not the only people that do mindfulness with students. There's a lot of amazing things going on all over the place when it comes to that. So thank you. I hope I didn't take away anything from anybody. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Are there other questions or additions? And this, I suppose, could be from our panel or our audience as well. Something that you want to say to do the yes and that was just referenced?
Jocelyn, could I respond to the equity question quickly?
What if I said no?
Then I wouldn't.
Kidding. Of course you can.
Great.
Please do.
I'll try to be brief, but it's also an engagement strategy, so I figured I'd share it. But one of the beautiful things about hip hop pedagogy is that it aims to dismantle the power hierarchies in the classroom, not just student to student, but teacher to student. And so one journey that I've been on this year has been, how can I just kind of strip away my own power here as the teacher in the room? And it's made much more difficult by virtual learning, just the nature of being the host in a Zoom. But one thing that's really helped is, if you've never read For White Folks Who Teach in the Hood, the Christopher Emdin reality pedagogy book, highly recommend it, because he talks about one strategy that comes out of the hip hop cipher, which is co-generative dialogues. Basically, a small group of students who you meet with on a weekly basis and really are partners in designing curriculum, in developing essential questions, really taking some of the onus off of me to design the class and giving the power and the voice to them. So that's another engagement strategy that we've really been enjoying at Toki in music class. And I also think it's a really important equity strategy as well, making sure that student voice is valued.
Thank you, Eliev. Actually, if I could have designed a wrap up to this, that would have been it. So thank you Glad I didn't say no to you. I mean, I considered it, but just went with yes. So we're gonna wrap it up here. I just had a question. Jamie, speaking of dogs barking, remind our audience where they can access this video perhaps later on.
Sure. So if all the technology powers that be align, this will download onto my computer. I will upload it into a YouTube and I will get it sent out along with any of the collective resources that the group offers from this panel and the next panel. And so I'll send that out sometime before the end of the week. That'll give our panelists time to drop that in. The resource document that Jocelyn dropped in the chat is a great place for us to share audience members. And I'll just quick, the Hip Hop in the Heartland has 2 more sessions yet this spring. Really great. They're virtual Saturdays and pretty inexpensive for the spring session. And I'll link that in. Also, if audience members, you're interested, panel number 2 is going to begin at 2:15. There is a link on the flyer to get into that if you haven't already RSVP'd. So that is an option for you as well. And maybe at this point, if we could, give it up for our panelists, you can unmute yourself and put some snaps. And thank you so much. Woo woo!
Woo, 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 woo.
Woo! Yeah.
Jill, go ahead.
Hey, I just wanted to give a quick shout out. For those of you who don't know, I'm a new educator mentor, and I've got 3 beginning educators that are panelists. Tanya Gruder, I supported a few years ago. She's a year 3 educator. Eliav Goldman is in year 2, and Teresa is year 1. So I'm just so proud of all of you guys for being leaders in our school district. It's amazing. Yeah, so thank you all.
Absolutely. So truly humbled. Wow. So I don't even know. This was amazing. Jamie and hey, listen, we got to give it up to Jamie. I'm just here for the ride. So she's the brainchild behind this. So hopefully this works out. I hope everybody got something out of this. And like Jamie said, I want to emphasize that document, share the resources. There was so much knowledge and love in this room. So let's do it. Let's get it out there. We'll get through this semester and somehow we'll return to a new normal. So all right.
Yeah. And one more thing. I think Jocelyn and I tentatively marked on our calendar for 2 weeks from now, Wednesday afternoon, to do another one of these. So I think it's fair to say this went well. And so I'll add that information out there as well. So it's always great to hear from teachers practicing in the field in the real time. So thank you so much. And I'm going to have to stop recording and you all have a great afternoon. I got to hop over to the next Zoom.